councillors, officers and members of the public, welcome to the 3rd of May 2023 Ordinary Meeting of Council. I will now open the meeting with the prayer. Almighty God, be with us as we work for the people of the Shire of Moorabool. Grant us wisdom that we may care for the Shire as true stewards of your creation. May we be aware of the great responsibilities placed upon us. Help us to be just in all our dealings, and may our work prosper for the good of all. Amen. I will now read the Acknowledgement of Country. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. In accordance with Moorabool Shire's Council governance rules, the Council will be recording and live streaming this meeting. The Moorabool News and Star Weekly have also been granted permission to record this meeting. Councillors, we have 2 apologies for tonight. We have 5 councillors in attendance. We have the Mayor, Councillor Rod Ward, and Councillor Tonya Dudzik. Confirmation of minutes. Councillors, you have a recommendation in front of you to confirm the minutes of the 5th of April 2023 Ordinary Council meeting. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation? Councillor Berry. A seconder? Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, does anyone have a disclosure of interest to declare? No? We'll move to public question time. Councillors, we have received 3 questions from members of the public to be considered at this meeting. The first question is from Ben Cortes, and the General Manager of Community Assets and Infrastructure, Phil Jeffrey, will read the question and response. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the question is, when did the Racecourse and Rec Reserve project first start pumping its wastewater into the Mattingley Park drain? And now, how often has it occurred from the first time until the EPA issued the notice to stop? And the response is, the majority of Racecourse Reserve and part of the Stonehill Estate in Mattingley form part of the upper catchment for the Mattingley drain that connects to the Werribee River. Stormwater from part of the Racecourse Reserve is always discharged through a pipe under Bacchus Marsh Ballyang Road and into this system. As part of Council's redevelopment of the reserve, a stormwater harvesting system is being developed that will reuse stormwater on the site for irrigation purposes. When this system reaches capacity through heavy rain events, it will still discharge under Ballyang Road, as has historically been the case. Concurrently, there is a residential development on the east side of Ballyang Road that is implementing retarding basins on the golf club part of the reserve and upgrading the capacity of the pipe system under Ballyang Road and through its development. This work meant that there was no gravity outlet for the racecourse site for a time, and a pump was temporarily put in place to drain the site. This pump is now pumping back into the main irrigation dam on the reserve. Given the construction activity happening on the site, this has resulted in stormwater discharge with high sediment load and subsequently an EPA investigation. As vegetation establishes on the site and the stormwater quality and harvesting system is commissioned, the system will operate as designed and will revert back to a gravity system outlet for stormwater discharge.
Thank you. Question 2 is from John Kowalski. I will get Mr Jeffries to read the question and response again. Thank you.
So the question is, can Council please give me a total cost breakdown of the recently opened installations at the Spargo Creek and Ballan Mineral Springs into the categories of Council personnel costs, external consulting costs and construction costs? The response is, the Ballan and Spargo Creek Mineral Springs projects were grants received from the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, DECA, in 2 phases over recent years. Phase 1 was $40,000 for concept creation and included the cost for engaging local Indigenous artists and consultants and the conceptualisation of the themes and vision for the artwork. Phase 2 was $70,000 for construction and installation and included the fabrication of the artwork and signage, installations, landscaping and vegetation remediation and launch events.
Thank you, Mr Jeffrey. And the third question is from Mr Brian Head, and I'll refer to Mr Jeffrey again for the third question. Thank you.
The question is, why is McIvors Road, after 15 years, I assume it is, been reclassified as a paper road when rates are still being paid and garbage collected, with council insisting they don't need to maintain the road? The response is the first 155 metres of McIver Road, Wallace, is listed in the Register of Public Roads in Council's Road Management Plan. However, it should extend to the last driveway as per historic maintenance practices. This error will be rectified in the Register of Roads and ongoing maintenance will resume as previously undertaken.
Thank you, Mr Jeffrey. We'll move on to item 9 as petitions. As there are no petitions for this meeting, we will move to the next item. Item 10, presentations and deputations. There are also no presentations and deputations. We'll move to item 11.1. Councillors, we now have to move on to the Chief Executive Officer's report. The first report is the CEO's annual leave. Councillors, you have a recommendation in your papers before you regarding the report.
I'll move the recommendation to allow the CEO to take a well overdue break.
I have a move. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Any dissent? No? All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.2. The next report is application to add an addendum to the West Madingley Development Plan at 289 Werribee Vale Road, Madingley. We have two speakers to this item. I will first call Jodie Valpede. Jodie, is Jodie? Yes? Thank you, Jodie. You can take a seat and switch on your microphone. You have 3 minutes to address the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and councillors and CEO. Yes, so I'm presenting on behalf of Bacchus Marsh Platypus Alliance in relation to this item. The item is in, so this property is in the area that is covered by the West Madingley Development Plan. It's an area that is set aside in that plan as public space, which I'll get to in a moment. Bacchus Marsh Platypus Alliance's interest in this area, and particularly in this site, is that we are the primary organisation monitoring the Werribee River in that section and monitoring current sediment runoff from Stonehill development stages 24 to 25, which is immediately beside this development and has the same developer. So this is basically an extension of that into that area. I note that there is an overlay, a development plan overlay over this property. Schedule 3, clause 43.04 is relevant to that development plan overlay. The overlay actually states, and I quote, "Before approval of a development plan, the responsible authority must place the development plan on exhibition for comment by interested parties." Now, this is an addendum to the development plan, but it actually changes what is in the development plan, which is public space. That is clearly marked in that development plan as public space to be retained as public space. So this amendment is basically changing the nature of that development plan. Now, the developers in their attachment have stated incorrectly that the subject site, The West Mattingley Development Plan identifies the subject site as land for public open space. However, notes that there is potential development opportunity on the site. We have looked at that development plan. I encourage councillors to have a look at a clearer version of that development plan. In their attachment, it's quite blurry and you can't read the writing. It clearly states open space, and there is nothing in the West Mattingley Development Plan that actually says anything about potential development opportunity, other than saying that there's kind of a boundary where you could potentially construct something on, you know, like a playground or something to do with, you know, relevant to open space. That doesn't change the fact that that is set aside as open space. There is nothing in the attachment, so in the developer's submission or in the council officer's report, there is no note of substituting that public space with another area of public space. That, of course, is a important public matter, and another reason why the overlay requirement needs to be fulfilled, that development plan go to public exhibition. Also, there are a whole host of things within that overlay that need to be addressed anytime that development plan is changed. Now, some things have been addressed, partially. Ecological considerations, geotechnical considerations, stormwater considerations. I encourage councillors to have a look at that overlay.
Sorry, Mrs. Valpete, I just want to remind you, you did only have 3 minutes,
yes.
So if you could finish
so
that up,
I'll
thank you.
My last point is that where those things have been considered, they refer back generally to the original assessments that were approved for the current Stonehill Stages 3, 24 to 25 development. Councillors, you are still waiting on a report on the current sediment and lack of pollution control at that development. Clearly, those things that were put in place for that development aren't working because there's been a lot of pollution of the river. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, if I just get you to sit there for a second.
Yes, in case of...
Councillors, do we have any questions for the Speaker? No? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I will call on our next speaker, Mr. David Marnie. Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for giving me an opportunity to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of the Moorabool Environment Group, and particularly on behalf of our President, Caspar Mart, who was unable to make it tonight. And I'll be very brief. We strongly support the work that Jody and the Bacchus Marsh Platypus Alliance does. And in this case, in this particular issue, we are very concerned that there hasn't been proper time for us to comment and to take further planning and legal advice about this. In particular, we believe that, and we support the changes to the Moorabool Environment and Sustainability Advisory Committee, that this is the sort of comment or sort of proposal that could be taken to that committee and give time for proper consultation about it. We're also very concerned that there isn't reciprocity or equivalency in that some public space has been taken away and it's not being replaced. Now, in our town, we consider public space, particularly close to the river, as incredibly important, and we're also very concerned that if we make this decision tonight, there is equally other places of public space close to the Werribee River that are also could become seen as for development. And so we're very concerned that without proper consultation, this takes a precedent for other changes that will have a detrimental impact on our amenity. I should also say that the Moorabool Environment Group is not opposed to development. We're in the middle of a housing crisis and we support good development, and we actually support housing and a model of housing that is entirely, that should be of the highest possible standard for our community and that reflects our our peri-urban and provincial nature, and we believe that this doesn't reflect that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Money. Councillors, is there any questions for Mr Money? No? Thank you, Mr Money. Councillors, you have a recommendation in...
Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Berry.
Madam Chair, I've just got a question for officers. Is there any other opportunities in that for open space or public space in the Stonehill development?
I'll refer to Mr Bazoon now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll pass that on to Mr Lavelle for clarification.
So within the Stonehill estate, there are designated public open space areas. That's actually active open space areas, and there is a series of encumbered land which cannot be used for recreational purposes. There is no other opportunity for additional active open spaces within the Stonehill estate.
Councillor Edwards, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Just probably a follow-on that through Madam Chair. So my understanding that this land is actually zoned general residential with a heritage overlay, and that it will not be transitioned to council, or is not proposed to be public open space.
Mr Bazoon now.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. So, councillors, you have a recommendation in the papers before you. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation? Oh, yes, Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I would like to actually recommend we defer this item based on a motion that is unfulfilled that went through at the February OMC.
Councillor Berry would like to move an alternate motion. You are moving an alternate motion, yes? Do I have a seconder for the alternate motion? No?
Question.
Yes, Councillor Tatchell.
The councillor noted that there was something unanswered in February. What was that?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Councillor Tatchell, I put up a motion at the OMC in February to have an investigation into the sediment that's running down from the Stonehill estate, that's the development, and this proposed addendum juts on to that estate. So the sediment, there's a possibility of sediment running through down to the river through the stormwater drain. I haven't yet received an update or reply on that motion.
Councillor Tatchell?
Yeah, question to officers, if I may, Chair. So was this development approved by the Water Authority? Or the recommendation? Was this particular amendment approved by the Water Authority?
I'll pass
Correct,
to...
Madam Chair.
Yep. I'll pass to Mark Lovell. Yes? Okay. So we had no seconder for the alternate. So the alternate is lost. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any seconder for the alternate? Yes. Councillor Edwards. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. We'll move on to item 11.3, Domestic Animal Management Plan 2021 to 2025, Registration of Assistance Animals. Councillors, you have a recommendation in the papers before you regarding the report. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation? Councillor Edwards.
I'll move with a question, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Edwards.
Just in relation to the report, and I thought it was a very good report, what it did highlight is some deficiencies in state government policies. So I fully support the recommendations and happy to move that. But I'll just ask, would we be able to write to the state government and ask them to update their Domestic Animal Act so that it actually aligns with the Anti-Discrimination Act? Because the way it sounds at the moment is they only recognise guide dogs as assistance animals, which is not common with other laws and even higher laws within this country, including federal laws. So can we write the state government with that? I don't need that as a part of the recommendation. I'm happy with the just if you could take that on board, please.
Madam Chair, yes, Council can write to state government. I think it's important that there's consistency and alignment between different legislation, and so we can point that out, and I'll definitely write a letter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a mover. Councillor Berry, will you second it? Yep. Any dissent?
Just a question, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Sutton.
Is this sort of reviewed annually, or is it sort of set and forget? With respect to a person, do we sort of just...
Mr CEO.
Is it an annual thing or what?
The goal is to review how it's been rolled out annually, and then we will come back to council with what the data is saying.
Thank you.
No dissent. All those in favour? It is carried. Item 11.4, peppercorn rent eligibility for licensed space at Darley Civic Hub, Bacchus Marsh Community Radio Incorporated. We have a registered speaker to the item, and that is Mr. Thomas Coutinho, and he has a written submission which has been circulated. All councillors do have a copy, but he will also be speaking to us online. I will just give him a second to... Hello, Mr. Coutinho.
Unfortunately, I cannot hear you guys, but I will assume that you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can. You have the floor.
Hear you guys, but I will assume that you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right. Yep, I will. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Thomas Coutinho, and I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity to speak to the submission for peppercorn rent for Bacchus Marsh Community Radio Station. I'd also like to thank Kate Pryor for the work she did in helping us prepare the submission, which speaks for itself. I'd like to use my time tonight to highlight some of the station's community engagement. As the council is aware, the Bacchus Marsh Community Radio Group, more commonly known as Apple 98.5 FM, operates a community radio station within the areas of Moorabool Shire. As a community radio station, we are required to engage with our community. At the station, we actively pursue different venues of engagement with local interest groups and individuals to promote Apple FM as the voice of the Valley. One of the avenues of engagement that we pursue is with youth services and local schools to provide training for those interested in radio broadcasting. We provide two training programs, one a formal process, which with defined course structure and lessons plans targeted at youth who have an interest in media and broadcasting as a career, and is arranged in a concrete with both arranged in concert with both local educational institutes and Moorabool Shire Youth Services Department. The course investigates aspects of media and is carried out with both classroom and hands-on elements. The end requirement is that the student produces and presents their own shows to air. The second program is less structured, more hands-on in a confidence-building format using on-air mentoring. The program targets all age groups and ability and can particularly helpful in developing confidence, clear thinking, positive assertiveness, and responsibility. Like many things during the COVID, our training program was put on hold, and we are in the process of restarting these programs and have engaged with several of the schools in the Shire and the Moorabool Youth Services to discuss training opportunities. Another avenue of community engagement is through our outside broadcasts. Working with local organizers, we provide outside broadcasts for large and small events where, upon request. These broadcasts provide a point of entertainment for those in attendance, as well as the ability for those who can't make it to the event to engage. They also help promote the station and build interest with those who might want to volunteer at the station. Local sports is also represented through live outdoor broadcasts of two of the BFL clubs with the Apple FM broadcast team covering both home and away games. These various avenues of community engagement help Apple FM maintain a diverse volunteer base, which produce unique programming targeting a broad range of music taste and special interests. These programming include content important to a variety of groups, including Indigenous, Islander, religious groups, cinema lovers, over 55 groups, and local not-for-profits. The station also hosts the weekly Your Community Show, which is a general and open forum for the community to engage with each other and presenters. Local topics and issues are discussed, and regular engagement is made with local not-for-profit groups, technical help groups, and people like yourself, the local government. This blend of programming provides a diverse and interesting media outlet for which our community can engage, all of which is run by a team of dedicated volunteers. No one is paid, and the programming and community engagement and empowerment that we provide is all done because we enjoy giving back to the community. As with many of these community groups, a lot of it is done on a limited budget, and Apple FM is no exception. The grant of a peppercorn rent will go a long way to allow the station to maintain an active involvement in the community. We sincerely hope that our work in the community and this endeavor for this proposal are and continue to be successful. And again, thank you for the opportunity to address the council.
Thank you, Mr. Contino. Councillors, is there any questions for Mr. Contino?
And again, thank you for the opportunity to address the council.
Thank you, Mr. Contino. No? Okay. Does anyone have a question? Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Mr. Contino, I understand, this is Councillor Berry here, I understand that the radio station relies on sponsorship, and where is that at the moment? You can't hear us.
The sponsorship has, due to the COVID and the economic downturn, we have had a drop off. We still have a good sponsorship. I do not have the exact numbers. I was previously the treasurer, but have relinquished that role as of the last AGM. We can find that out, but we've definitely had a downturn in the number of sponsors.
Thank you.
I just have a question of officers.
Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
My question is, I noted that the recommendation 1A talks about the dollar plus outgoings, which is about, the outgoings about $1,713, which is noted on page 20. They are realistic costs to the council? I mean, we can't have, I mean, this is it can't be a burden on the other communities thing. So is that realistic? And do you monitor that to make sure that it's up to speed?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's the number we were given when we actually investigated it. So I think from our point of view, we just have to take that number as from our officers internally as to be accurate.
Any other questions? Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. One is we have a number of these non-for-profit people in that area. I assume that they're all on the same deal for a peppercorn lease plus outgoings.
Councillor, sorry, CEO.
Through the chair, each one of the leases is reviewed as they come up. So not all of the leases are on the same terms at this stage. There is another report coming to council soon with another one of the occupants. So as those leases come up, they come back to council and they're reviewed separately.
And I have a second question. Is I note that 3 months out from a 1-year lease, they have to strictly notify that they want to continue. Well, I understand all that, but and I know that's commonplace in a lot of organisations, but in this particular case, this place, I'd imagine, would be heavily modified to put a radio station in. And on the basis that this is now going to come back every year, I'd rather see a 3-year agreement or a 4-year agreement. So we don't hamper any investment in terms of electronic equipment or whatever needs to be done to maintain this facility. I'd also note that they also provide some sponsorship via the council out to the public as well. So there is an advantage at both ends. So, and I assume because it's a non-for-profit that they can't charge for advertising. So it would need to be done via sponsorship. So the question is, shouldn't this be a 3-year with an option, or a 1+1+1 with an option to us?
Mr CEO, would you like to take that, or governance?
Through you, Madam Chair. At the moment, and Mr Contino has been dealing with the governance team in relation to this, the request has been the 12-month plus the 12-month, not a 3-month term. I think basically because they are not-for-profit, that's the reason why they've requested that.
Sure.
I'm saying 3 years, not 3 months.
Sorry. Sorry, it's a 12-month term only with a 12-month option. There's no 3 years. That was their request, not to go for 3 years.
Okay, thank you. All right, councillors. Any other questions? Oh, yes, Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation with a question. So the 12-month is very similar to what we offer all clubs on an annual basis, correct?
Mr CEO.
Chair, that's correct. I assume it's probably got to do with their status as to why they prefer that.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Berry. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 12. Councillors, we will now move on to Community Planning and Development Report 12.1. The first report is 6-lot subdivision at 289 Werribee Vale Road, Madingley. We have 3 speakers to the item. I will first call Aidan Robinson, who is the applicant. Is Aidan in here today? Yes. Thank you, Aidan. Just turn your microphone on.
My name is Aidan Robinson. I also have Hugh McKenzie from our office as well. I think that's okay.
Mr. McKenzie?
I just intend to clarify a few things that were raised earlier.
So only one speaker on behalf of you?
No, Aidan will speak. I was just going to raise a couple of things that clarify a couple of things that were raised earlier.
I think because you obviously did have to register before 3 p.m. today, we will just have to have one speaker. Sorry.
Aidan can speak.
Mr. Robinson, you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, councillors, thank you for your time this evening. We're here in the capacity of town planners on behalf of the permit applicant. Just quickly want to touch on the previous item around the development plan, a couple of perhaps clarifications. So the land there is privately owned. It's not a public space at the moment. I hope that's quite clear. And the land is attached to the development plan overlay. There's a concept plan at the lower end of that document that, in our mind, clearly stipulates there is an ability to develop this portion of the land subject to further consideration, which is what we have done with council officers recently. But I'll move from there and start with confirming we support overall the officer's overall recommendation to support the application. This recommendation has been brought forward after 2 years of collaboration with officers, and we thank them for their time and support. Overall, we consider the proposal presents a well-considered response to its site's opportunities and constraints, and is in accordance with the planning scheme, its provisions, and overall adds diversity to the range of residential lots in the wider area. I'd like to just touch on a couple of the project's key attributes and benefits as we see them. In particular, the development is consistent with the general residential zone, which encourages residential development of this density. The subdivision will contribute to the diversity of lots, lot sizes and housing options in the surrounding area. The subdivision layout and subsequent development on this lots will ensure the retention of the heritage dwelling and will not adversely affect the significance of that heritage place. The land is considered to be appropriate for residential development in accordance with the West Mattingly Development Plan and its associated consultant assessments and reports. The layout of the subdivision avoids the removal of any scattered trees, remnant patches of vegetation, or notable trees, and in accordance with the consultant reports, the subdivision will appropriately manage future stormwater and traffic impacts. What I did want to focus on, though, is a couple of the recommended conditions in the agenda report, in particular condition 3, which relates to proposed restrictions on title, and condition 9, which relates to the construction of a footpath along the frontage of the site. I won't read condition 3 out, and I hope it's available in front of you. But in short, we strongly suggest this condition is unwarranted. We understand from conversations with Council's officers that the condition was placed primarily to protect the heritage dwelling being retained on the farm. However, I think it's worth noting that the heritage impact statement prepared by Lovell Chen as a part of the application concluded that the subdivision and the developments that can be anticipated to result from the subdivision will not adversely impact the significance of that heritage place. So not only the subdivision itself, but the dwellings upwards of 2 stories would not have an impact on that heritage place. It's therefore put to councillors that that condition is unnecessary. In particular, we note that this heritage matter was discussed at length with officers through the application process, and we had understood that the report had been considered and accepted in full. In subsequent discussions recently with officers, we were unable to gain sufficient justification as to why then additional restrictions were required. Perhaps a question for the officers may be warranted tonight. Just very briefly on the 3 points of that condition. One relates to further subdivision. We see that as unnecessary given that a permit is required to subdivide the land further. In relation to condition B, which restricts the dwellings to single storey, again, we note that there is no restriction on height throughout the whole subdivision area, wider development plan, and that the heritage report accepts that anticipated dwellings on there will not impact the heritage overlay.
Excuse me, Mr. Robson, I'll just have to get you to finish up. Thank you.
Just lastly on that final condition, it relates to a setback that is proposed. We say that is inappropriate because there is no restriction within the development plan or the planning scheme about setbacks to streets and what that may achieve in terms of heritage. The last condition relates to condition 9, and that is, we say, an inappropriate outcome or an unreasonable request. There's not an achievable space between the road curb and the lot boundary to achieve a 1.5 metre footpath, and that footpath will not connect to any existing footpath to the north, and therefore the existing footpath on the eastern side of the road will adequately serve the 5 lots that's going to be created here, or the additional 5 lots. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr. Robson? Councillor Tatchell.
Officers, Madam Chair. The first one is, why isn't this at the DAC? I mean, 3 minutes for a complex presentation like that from both parties, the presenter and the objector. That's why the DAC was designed, and that's why it was taken out of these council meetings. So why was it put there, and are we in breach of the rules we set up with the DAC when these items were to be presented to the Development Assessment Committee?
Mr. Bazout now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 11.1, the development plan, and this item are closely linked. So if the development plan were not approved, this item could not have been considered. We've done it with the previous applications, which involved the development plan and subsequent subdivision. We've dealt with them jointly or simultaneously at a council meeting.
Councillor Tatchell.
On that basis, I recommend that when we have a planning matter coming to an ordinary meeting of council, that both the applicant and the objectors be afforded more time based on the subject matter. I think 3 minutes is totally unreasonable for this type of application.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Any other questions for the Speaker? No? Thank you, Mr Robson. I will now call Ms Valpede back to speak for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity to speak on this item. Again, I'm presenting on behalf of Bacchus Marsh Platypus Alliance. There, I guess, are some due process matters to first present. As per a letter that we sent to the CEO, Derek Medden, Bacchus Marsh Platypus Alliance are asserting our rights to procedural fairness on this matter. We have a substantial interest and direct interest in this land, particularly as the primary group that monitors the river and reports pollution from Stonehill development to relevant authorities. We have spent $30,000 worth of equipment, consulting fees and time on that monitoring area alone over the past 12 months. Although this planning application, so this subdivision application itself, isn't required to go to public exhibition, the West Mattingley development plan was required to go to public exhibition, the addendum to that. This subdivision application isn't. However, procedural fairness is a separate process for people who have, or for groups who have a direct interest. It's a process with legal consequences, including in VCAT, and that has been demonstrated in past cases. We, as a group, are privy to knowledge that has not been addressed by council officers' reports, and perhaps that even officers within the council, you know, when those reports were prepared, some of that information may not have even been available, including that these developers are currently under investigation by the EPA in regards to Stonehill.
Madam Chair, we've had two.
Yes, Councillor Tatchell.
One, we're talking about legal matters. The second is that we're talking about information and documentation that we rightly don't have privy to. We work on the report that we have here. And then we're actually bringing up savings on shores in front of a judicial arrangement. So we need to keep this under control. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Please proceed. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, so yeah, we are requesting due process and consultation as key stakeholders in this matter. We have received administrative legal advice on this, and this is a risk that council needs to consider.
Thank you, Ms Valpede.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms Valpede? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now call Mr David Marnie for our last speaker on this item. Thank you, Mr Marnie.
Once again, thank you for your time. Apart from what I was going to say, and just listening to the discussion tonight, it clearly shows why these matters should be publicly discussed and why there should not, and why it is unfortunate that it was seen to be exempt from a notice provision. We've got a detailed plan here, and suddenly we start getting right into the minutiae, which I would have thought would have been solved before it came tonight. And if we want to have better planning in our community, let's have an open process, not something that's behind closed doors. So, for example, I have grave concerns around the subdivision. I'd like to know what is the process that went from an 8 subdivision to a 6. Looking at the plan, I too can get to minutiae. Does lot 6 make sense? So I really would like it that this is deferred, that allows better time for all parties to actually hone and get the best possible development plan for this site. So if you were going to say, for example, no footpaths, if the recommendation was going to be allowed that there would be 2 or 3 stories on that site, or that further subdivisions would be permitted, that's getting right into the detail, right into the substance of this proposed subdivision, and it changes entirely what has been given for us today. So please, let's actually have time where both objectives and the proponents can actually put together a better plan for what is an incredibly important part of a new development overlooking rural land and the Werribee River.
Thank you, Mr Money. Any questions for Mr Money from the councillors? No? Thank you, Mr Money. Sorry, Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Madam
Do you
Chair.
have a question?
I don't have a question for Mr Marnie, but I have a question for the officers.
Yes.
Was the letter that the Bacchus Marsh Platypus Alliance sent to the CEO, was it considered in making the decision for this area, for this agenda item?
Mr Bazet now.
Madam Chair, through the letter sent to the CEO, is that in relation to the
Correct.
platypus, the stormwater?
The Platypus Alliance sent
Yep.
a letter to Mr CEO, but was that letter considered for...
Through the chair, I believe that letter was received yesterday evening and it was read this morning, so these reports were prepared long before that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillors, you have a recommendation in your papers before you.
Just have a couple of questions, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor.
I direct you to the design response plan that was in the attachments. It's on 18 of, but it's a design response plan, and it shows the proposed lots, and there's also the
Sorry, Councillor Sullivan, what page were you on?
Good question. 18 on, is that one? It's in the attachments.
Page 34.
Beg pardon?
I'm on page 34, it's not page 34.
But it's got 18 on.
Oh no, I found it,
on
thank
the
you.
attachment, sorry.
Page 18, yep.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, if I could just direct you to that design response plan. And in the legend, it says contour interval 0.25 metres, but there's no contours on it, so that's one thing. And I do note down on lot 6 where it says sheep shower. Now, a sheep shower is not something the showers to spruce themselves up before they go out. This is for lice management. So have the proponents sent anything like an environmental audit of that? Because back in the day, they used to use arsenic dipping sheep. It's quite a common thing. So I'm just officers, has that sort of been taken into consideration, please?
Mr Bazet now, thank you.
Mr Mayor, I might take that detailed question on notice, but what we did do, we did require the applicant to go through all the background reports which form part of the original DPO to identify whether any of those reports needed updates or changes. So that's gone through a process, and some of the reports were required to be updated. So, but that one I'll have to take on notice to answer the specific detail of that question.
Should get mic'd up. I guess what I'm saying is now you're drilling down into a smaller area, like that overall plan that you referred to is a broader and higher level. But it's sort of piqued my interest, and it's got sheep shower on the bottom right-hand corner, which would be a sheep dip. And I think that's the thing that sort of does concern me, that we just need to make sure that that is covered and make sure there's no legacy issues there, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any other questions?
No.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I understand that we do have legislative restrictions in terms of how these go out to the public and the advertising issue. I mean, and we have no control over that. In terms of where this is at, my concern here is that why would a letter to the CEO have any relevance in terms of a planning report? I mean, you know, otherwise does that mean that everything we put through planning, if they don't like it, it just goes to the CEO? I mean, he'd be a very busy CEO if he has to run planning as well as the other 500 jobs he's got. So, like he's going back for holiday.
Was that just a comment or a question, Councillor?
No, well, the question is why is it relevant?
Mr. CEO?
I think if there was new planning issues in it, it would be in this instance. It didn't form part of the officers, but unless there was some other information in it that we weren't aware of, you're correct as such. It would be the planning officer's decision. I can't influence planning decisions as much as I may like to sometimes.
Councillor Tatchell.
That brings me to the second question, that when we have delays of this nature, that then we have a timing issue because we're scheduled as well. We're bracketed by a timing issue where if a decision isn't made, we create a problem where an application can be stalled indirectly to make sure we go over that time to force it into a VCAT situation rather than a proper planning thing. Is that the case?
Madam Chair, through you, that certain applications are subject to advertising, to notice and review, and up until a decision is made, up until the night that Council make a decision, submissions may be received and Council can consider those submissions. Most of the times, Council would consider those, see if it's addressed in the report somewhere or can consider it. This specific application is exempt from notice and review. It's exempt from advertising. So any submission has got very limited influence, if any influence, in the Council decision, because Council can't technically take that into account.
Any other questions? No? Councillors, we have a recommendation. I'm in your hands.
I'll move the recommendation, Madam Chair.
Moved by Councillor Edwards. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tatchell. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. No, hang on. No, sorry. I'll just call...
Do you want a division?
Yeah, I will call a division. Thank you, Councillor Tatchell.
I'll call that. I don't think you can, but I'll call a division. Thank you.
Okay. So I will just show of hands for Councillor Edwards, Councillor Tatchell, Councillor Sullivan, and against Councillor Berry. So it is carried. Thank you. Councillors, we now move on to the Community Strengthening Reports, 13.1. The first report is the Draft Economic Development and Visitor Economy Strategy. We do not have it.
Madam Chair, I would move the recommendation with an undertaking that pages 20, 67, 78, 159. No, I don't.
You might want to put your microphone up.
I beg your pardon. You think after all this time I would know. So basically what I'm saying is I'll move the recommendation under the assurance I've had from the CEO that the draft document will actually rectify to address the issues that in line with what Council has adopted previously with respect to those acknowledgements. That's all. So,
is everyone comfortable with that? Yes?
Yep.
Do I have a second?
I'll move the recommendation with a question, if I may. So noting that there's a number of options here and we're proposing to go to tender, I'm assuming that that tender will come back for review, and if it was to be excessive, that we could reconsider options.
Mr CEO.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'll move the
Moved by
recommendation.
Councillor Edwards. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sullivan. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Community Strengthening Report, item 13.3, Rotary Park Precinct Master Plan. Councillors, we have a recommendation in the papers before you. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Yes, Councillor Edwards.
I'll move the recommendation with another question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor Edwards.
Just through yourself to officers, just in relation to the master plan, normally we would have a lot of actions with numbers. I just want to confirm that this is not committing us to any functions that will be carried out within the facilities. So, for example, the Andy Arnold Centre, which normally the master plan would say we'll either make it bigger, make it smaller. In here it says consideration will be that it will be used for these purposes. That's not normally a master plan, rather a different report to council. So I'll just confirm that will be the case.
Through the chair, that is correct. Any programs and services delivered at Andy Arnold is an operational matter and will be treated as an operational matter.
Thank you.
So moved by Councillor Edwards. Do I have a second? Councillor Tatchell. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. We'll now move on to Customer Care and Advocacy Reports. 14.1, Audit and Risk Advisory Committee, Independent Chair, Half-Yearly Report 2022-2023. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move?
I'll move that.
Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Tatchell. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 15.1, Notice of Motion Free Green Waste Month. We also have a recommendation in our paperwork. Councillors,
I'll
on
move
your
the
hand.
recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Edwards. Sorry, Councillor Berry, did you want to speak?
I can second that, but could we just add a number 3.2, can the report include statistics of all dumped green waste across the Shire for the same period?
Can I just confirm that that's not going to be an issue, I don't think?
Okay. Mr CEO?
Mr Jeffrey, I'll just have to check with their director.
Mr Jeffrey.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can I answer the question with a question? For what period are we seeking that information for?
Councillor Berry?
For the period of the 3-year trial basis.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, through Madam Chair, yeah, where we can break down, whether it's green waste or hard waste that's been illegally dumped and include that in the statistics.
Happy to accept that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. So seconded by Councillor Berry.
I have a question as well, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Councillor Tatchell? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you.
My
Sullivan. Question is, this is not going to start now, this is already ongoing, isn't it? So how far along the journey are we? Are we 1 year in or?
Mr Jeffrey?
Yeah, we're 1 year in the 3-year trial.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. That's all.
Councillor Tatchell, you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, why is it back here? I mean, we had a position to council a year ago for a 3-year trial, and a year later we've had to put staff back onto another report. Here we are, short of people, and here we are. We've had to go and recreate another report midstream of a 3-year contract that was arranged by council. I am astonished.
Mr CEO?
I might refer to Mr Jeffrey. I do know the reason, but he might be a bit more articulate. It was part of a notice of motion.
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, we're responding to a notice of motion that was requested by councillors, so hence the report.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Berry. Do I have any dissent? Councillor Tatchell. We will open the floor. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, certainly. So basically I'm happy with the program that we approved 3 years ago to continue. There was a question as to whether we would do additional waste with that, which I don't think is necessary because I think it would be unfair on the community if we all of a sudden, because we have a user pay system, if we all of a sudden did additional. So therefore, I'm happy that we just continue with the original program.
Councillor Tatchell.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I well remember the debate on this a year ago, and we had the luxury a couple of months ago of actually getting a report which actually confirmed the debate for those that objected to it. Yet we still continue. Had it not come in, it would have been 3 years and we wouldn't have had another say in it. Ultimately, the problem with this has always been exactly the problem. We quoted every other shire in the circus that they call local government in Victoria. We quoted every other one saying they were lucky to get between 20 and 25% take-up of that. So we knew that going in. And yeah, it's a bit like telling the child, don't put your hand on the hot stove because you've got to burn yourself, and then go and do it again. So here we are. And not only that, the actual people that are affected by this, that pay the largest fee and don't get to use, the rural people, are about to get shafted again by the valuation system. So ultimately, I still don't agree with this thing. I think when you're dealing with 20% or 25% of the people and 100% of the people are going to pay for it, it doesn't add up. We're in the 51% business. That's what we're at. That's the decisions we make. We try and get to 51%. In this particular case, it seems that every time somebody wants a service, there's somebody who doesn't get that service ends up paying for it. And I was absolutely astonished when it went through last time because we actually had a rural councillor vote for it. Oh, I was shocked because it was actually those people that are going to pay for something they don't get. So I know this is going to go through because all we're doing is exaggerating the 3-year plan and making sure that everybody's got something to do again. But no, Madam Chair, I don't agree with this at all.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm basically just satisfied with this recommendation with the third dot point in so we can make the comparisons going forward when the report comes in, if just to see if it does work or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, would you like to speak as well?
Councillor Tatchell does raise a persuasive argument, I must admit, and it does. I mean, the 3-year trial doesn't mean that you have to do the 3-year trial, but if along the way you find that it's not working, you back off. So I think maybe that's where we should be, backing off.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. So I'll pass back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, look, as I said, I haven't got much to add, but just to contend with a couple of those points. It's actually the rural areas did have a significant take-up on this if you look through the original report. And to be quite honest, the metropolitan areas have green waste bins in most of them, so therefore a lot of them don't use it. So I would disagree with Councillor Tatchell on that point. However, I think it's worthwhile continuing for 3 years because once again, and part of this strategy was always about illegal dumping of waste and how that affects our community. And this is a bigger and bigger problem. And I think as everybody's hip pocket gets more and more stretched, and I think there's no doubt about that, illegal dumping is going to be something that will continue to be a significant problem. So therefore, it's probably worthwhile continuing, in my humble opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I will move, sorry. Yes, I'll put it to a vote. So all those in favour? All those against? It is carried. Item 15.2, Capital Improvement Program Quarterly Report.
I'll move the recommendation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tatchell. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. councillors. We will now move on to other reports listed in the agenda, of which there are none. There is also no notices of motion, so we'll move to the next item agenda. There are also notices. There are also no notices of rescission. Item 19, Mayor's report. Councillors, you have can I have someone move the Mayor's report? Councillor Tatchell, seconded by Councillor Berry. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, the next item of the agenda is the councillors' reports. I will go around the room, starting with Councillor Sullivan. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of matters to report to Council. On Sunday the 16th of April, I attended the 100th birthday celebration of Mrs Sheila White from Millbrook, who's a local resident, been there for many, many years, and the local Millbrook community had an afternoon tea for Sheila. I mean, one doesn't get too many 100th birthday celebrations, I must admit. It's my first, and probably I don't think I'll make it myself. So anyway, it was a great day, and she's been a real pillar of the community and still actively involved in things, which is really a fantastic outcome, and she's a lovely person, so well done, Sheila. On Anzac Day, I attended the Anzac Day ceremony at Lau Lau.
Excuse me, we just need silence in the chamber, thank you, while the councillors speak. Or else you're happy to move outside.
We were wondering about our turn to speak on our thing about McIver Road. We were told to come and speak.
Yeah, it was in the question time. Mr Head, is it?
No one given time to speak.
Sorry, it was read out.
And the administrator got it all wrong when he read it out.
Okay.
Perhaps we could take this offline after the meeting. Might be the way. Is that all right?
We will take it offline after the meeting, thank you. If you could just stay around a little bit longer, we are nearly finished, if that's all right. Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, sorry.
Yes, Madam. As I was saying, on Anzac Day, I attended the Anzac Day ceremony at Lau Lau. I know councillors went to various venues. There was a very large number of people in attendance and many young people and families, which is great to see. And probably the weather itself was very conducive for people to be out and about. But the Master of Ceremonies, Angels Lorenzini, gave a speech which really struck a chord with me. He said, "Freedom is not free." And I thought, freedom is not free. That is very poignant. And particularly on Anzac Day, to sort of reflect upon that, to think people paid a heavy price for our freedom. And I think it was I thought about it quite a bit after he said it, freedom is not free. So anyway, there are those who paid a high price for our freedom. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I'll pass to Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I'll probably add to Councillor Sullivan's comments. I've been an ex-serviceman. I think Anzac Day's always been probably a very critical part of my life anyway. It's an important part of our life and people that I serve with. But ultimately, my concern is that this year, this RSL has done a fantastic job. It was only 5 years ago that they were down to 4 members and it was nearly closed. And it was probably 5 years ago. And this time round, they not only serviced Balan twice with the dawn service and then the march. They looked after Blackwood, Murniong. I know Kamida was looked after as it generally is. And of course, Bungaree does a fantastic job up there. And I'm always dirty that I never get an opportunity to go up there. And I get invited every time and we get caught up with one thing and another. So this brings me to my point that if we're going to have all these events and we're going to have all these dawn services, and we're going to have 2 marches, the Bacchus March has a march as well as a dawn service, that we really need a roster where councillors are actually able to attend all of them. I remember one year, and Tom will probably remember as well, we actually did 7 in one day. It poured rain, I went through 3 seats. But where we actually scheduled the services in our region so that everybody, I think Tom and I finished about 10 o'clock at night out at Yendon, soaking wet, but full of good cheer. So all I'm suggesting is that we have a week out, we have a look at who's available to go where, to make sure that we're represented at every service at least once, whether it be the smallest service at Blackwood. I know we did one at Blackwood about 6 years ago or 7 years ago in the middle of the day to fit in with the schedule. So I suppose I'd just like to see some scheduling, just so that everybody gets a look in. And my other thing is that I just want to congratulate Pippa and the ex-president for the extraordinary changeover where they've gone where one person was looking after everything and then he's had to go back to military duties and then Pippa's jumped into the breach. And I just think it's fantastic how it's all happened very seamlessly. And for those that were at Balan, especially after the march or in the morning, that got to listen to Ron Edwards as an ex-RAAF Vietnam vet on his experience with the Army and the Navy. And I thought it was just extraordinary. And even what makes it even more extraordinary is the fact that it was a long weekend, where normally we would lose people because they'll be away and they'll do services in other towns, wherever they are. But there was a lot of faces I knew had gone away that weekend that had come back to do the service. And I'd also like to, if I can, with your indulgence, Chair, thank the Mequicare staff for bringing those people up from the hospital. And I know a couple of those people that served, and I know they're not travelling too well. And I know I'm probably not the most religious guy in the world, but I went home that night and said a bit of a prayer for those guys. It's a tough gig getting old, but isn't it fantastic when you see them up there and the people that cared for them and brought them up to the service. And coming next year, I think we need to look at a bigger setup, because there's just not enough room now for the wreaths, and I hope that continues throughout the Shire and all the events. So thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry to take such a prolonged look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Berry.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I, like most councillors here, attended a few Anzac Day services. I attended the dawn service in Bacchus Marsh, where there were so many families, from babies right up to teenagers, who actually spoke, and there was a beautiful poem read out by the president of Bacchus Marsh RSL that a 12-year-old had put together, and I think it was very moving. And I'm not sure whether there was a dry eye in that service. It was hard to see, still being dark in the morning, but was well put together by the Bacchus Marsh RSL. And then they also conducted the march, like Balan, at 9:30. Was mentioned that I was the lone councillor because there was no state or federal representation there either, but I marched with the local police, and I was following some of the veterans, and one in particular I tried keeping in time with him, but he kept swapping. So I had a lot of fun just being there, mixing with those people, finding out what they've been through. There was one veteran who actually struggled walking from the hospital to the RSL, and he just kept waving everybody on. He said, I can't, and he walked out the whole distance of the walk, way behind everybody else. It was just beautiful. Also attended the Comaida 12 p.m. service with a large community representation. Again, the President, Ken, said to me, we don't expect many out here, but there was about 80 turned up, and in particular the local Comaida Primary School, who Moira Smith is, not Moira Smith, Moira Ross is, there's too many Moiras around in this town, sorry, Moira Ross, who is the wife of the local police constable, and she is the principal at Comaida Primary, and those children that presented and laid the wreath made that wreath. It was absolutely beautiful. It was made from local gum nuts and local flora. It was just a pleasure to be out at Comaida also. There's one little sour note in my report today that I was quite disappointed to hear that the federal government has announced millions of dollars to AFL football once again in starting up a team in Tassie, and we hope that our pool, indoor pool money isn't too far away, considering the differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, look, I won't add much more, but I too, I suppose, coming out of COVID, it'd be easy for people to go back into their shells, but the turnout, and Councillor Thatcher will remember some of our early endeavours at the with the PA system in Bacchus Marsh and not being able to hear or see, but I've got to admit these functions that are run by the RSL have just got better and bigger every year, which is great to see, particularly in these trying times around the world when we see all these areas of conflict happening. It's a good reminder of what sacrifice people will pay. As you said, Councillor Sullivan, it's not free. So let's hope we don't end up there.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I'll just quickly add to my councillor report. Councillor Berry and I attended the Blackwood Easter Woodchop Festival earlier in the month. Congratulations to all involved. They did a wonderful, a lot of effort for the day throughout the year, and despite pushing forward with the rain and the wind, and there were still plenty of Blackwood people and surrounds and people from Melbourne that attended that day, so that was wonderful. I also attended the Anzac Day service in Balan, and I just wanted to make a special note. I did see a bunch of carrots put on the cenotaph for the horses and the donkeys that served, and we were very, very lucky to have a donkey and a horse in the march. I was quite chuffed to see that. And just one other thing, on Sunday just gone, I represented the Mayor down at Pikes Creek Reserve for the Women in Rescue event. It was a training exercise event, but celebrating women in the SES and in rescue, and it was very heavily attended by lots of women, lots of excited women that were ready to do the mock rescue, and they'd been there since 8 a.m. hiding dummies in the bush. So it was a great day to watch. So I thank them all for having me there that day. So we will move on to, I have to move the reports. I just need a councillor to move the councillor reports. Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Berry. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, urgent business. I will go around the room again. Councillor Sullivan, do you have any urgent business?
No urgent business, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Tatchell, do you have any urgent business?
Just a question, if I can, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to clarify our paper road. I know we put something through on paper roads late last year, but I did note that on one particular paper road that's in Belen, that it's now called a dry weather road. And I want to know, I suppose the question is, once a paper road becomes a dry weather road, does it become a road?
Mr Jeffrey.
Through you, Madam Chair, if it's a government road, anyone can legally access that road at any time, regardless of its status as what we term a paper road, or whether it's a road in our road register in the road management plan. It's a very complex area to try and explain succinctly, but yeah, if it's a paper road, it pretty much means we don't actively maintain it. A warning sign may have been put up to advise of dry weather access only, but I'd need to understand the circumstance.
Councillor Tatchell?
Well, I'll allow the General Manager for Engineering to take the high road. I'll take the low road. My issue is that whilst I accept that and people do use these, when it has a negative effect on properties that adjoin that road, whether they be a paper road, a dry weather road, or the yellow brick road, I don't really care. Can we come to at least an agreement that if it's doing damage to another property, either bollard it or road it, one or the other? But I think we probably need to do some work in that space. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Berry, do you have any urgent business?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Edwards, any urgent business?
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. We will move on to, so there is no closed session of council tonight. So thank you, councillors, officers. We were going to speak to Mr. Head. We did read Mr. Head's question out and the response. I can get Mr. Jeffries to speak to. Okay. All right. Mr. Head, would you like to take the chair? You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for letting me speak and be here. My main thing is that we're trying to find out how long ago McIver Road became a paper road, because it was originally recorded as government road, and under Vic Roads, right to the railway track, it is claimed to be owned by the council. So that's one of the things Vic Roads have actually said to us, that the council have to maintain it right up to the railways, and that's from Vic Roads themselves. That's what they told me. I tried to get them to send me a letter, but they haven't. And when they did come and grade the road the other day and put the thing, the number 15 was house 15, they stopped that. They didn't come down to 23 or to 25, which is on the street. They stopped at 15 and went up. But they did come and take all our gravel off the road at our end that we'd put there. And at the end of McIver Road, I had built a turnaround for the garbage trucks because they were getting bogged down at the railway end of McIver Road. So we've had white clay, gravel, quartz rock laid there for the garbage trucks to use and turn and leave instead of reversing up the road. That was done in roughly 2017 when we did that for the garbage trucks. So he got bogged in our front yard and we had to pull him out. And the other thing is we would like a written report on when McIver Road was turned into a paper road by this council. If that's okay by the council to do that for us, please. And we would like the gravel returned back out the front of from 23 to 25 that was taken off. We put gravel down there once before because it got slippery. We asked council and the council said they would do it, and then it took a year and we had some gravel from a friend of ours who was working on the railways, drop it down for us on the road. And it made it safe for the garbage truck. That's now been removed and we would like it returned out the front so it makes it safer. And the trench that was dug by the farmer across the road, right out the front of our house, we'd like to know what happens with that. And the other thing I'd like to put to you is at the bottom of 23, at the bottom of McIver Road, this gentleman was talking about rubbish being dumped. At the bottom of McIver Road, one of the farmers, I will not go into details which farmer it is because we all know who he is, has been dumping farm waste, rocks, fence posts, barbed wire in McIver Road, even bluestone, down in the water catchment. So there is, in McIver Road, there is a water river, a little creek, and then there's the Moorabool Shire, which is being dug up at this point in time, which is environmental damage. If you talk about protecting things, that's something we'd like to have looked at in Wallace as well, the environmental damage and silt being pumped into the river. And even he pumped his swamp that's on his property into the Moorabool River.
Thank you, Mr. Head. Thank you, and thank you for your patience and sorry for the mishap earlier.
Yeah. Madam Chair, is Mr. Head aware of the response that that Mr. Jeffrey has provided to council, and perhaps that if you could get a copy of that, that might sort of assist.
I agree, Councillor Sullivan.
The question just related to the paper road. The other issues that Mr. Head raised are the bona fide issues, but they're not relating to the question. So perhaps if the response could be furnished to Mr.
I will also
Head,
refer to Mr. Jeffries for any other comment. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think at the conclusion of the meeting I might sit down with the speaker and just have a chat and clarify what's going on that road.
That would be wonderful. Are you
Yeah,
have time to stay around, Mr Head? Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Tatchell.
What's the mystery is, where did the gravel go? I mean,
Good question. We will get to the head of it all, concluding this meeting. Thank you. Councillors, officers and members of the public, thank you for attending this evening's meetings and being patient with me. I will declare the meeting closed. Thank you.